Why are opposition political parties based in Matabeleland not doing so well in elections? Finally, Mr. Nkala. Mr. Nkala was born in Mchabezi, that is in Kwanda North District. He did his primary schooling in Mchabezi and then went on to complete his high school education in Harare. He is an accounting and a business studies graduate. And he is a chartered accountant. He is a global member of the Association of Chartered Accountants. Mr. Nkala is here.
Good evening, everybody. Ibizo lami Nkala. Ngisebenza kakhulu kweze economics and accountancy. My interest in politics is because I believe ukuthi politics and economics are fellows in the bed, or are bedfellows. For that reason, I'll give my submission for the reasons why we are facing so much challenges. Matabeleland. I will probably work on some of the submissions that others have probably already given, but nevertheless, that is the topic that we are having. That I believe is that there is lack of trust in the current ZANU-PF government, in the sense that we mustn't forget that ZANU-PF committed atrocities on the people of Matabeleland, and the people of Matabeleland are still requesting for the government to account for those atrocities. Now, when it comes to Indaba elections and the need to participate in the elections for the purposes of trying to remove the same government, there is generally lackluster participation because the same government that committed atrocities, number one, has never accounted for them. Secondly, there is lack of belief that the same government can be removed from power through elections. There are various accounts to that. I can mention just a few where people have openly said that this government cannot be removed by elections, probably when you engage me. The other issue that probably is affecting the patterns, the voting patterns, I'll dwell on it via the statistics that I've just gathered from 1980 to present. You will observe that both Matabeleland and Midlands, in terms of voter participation, when I look at the statistics, the numbers in 1980 were the highest that we have ever had in Zimbabwe from Matabeleland and Midlands. The participation was about 30% of the total voter participation of votes that were cast. Matabeleland itself, before it was separated into Matabeleland North, Lawa Province and Mat South, contributed about 20% of the votes. So it is a clear sign from the statistics that I read, the trends has been going down from around 30% to the current 12% that we recorded last year. Some of the reasons that I've just alluded to earlier on. The patterns probably are affected by the fact that Abantu Matabeleland, they feel probably that the government, in terms of the system that they are using to govern the country, isn't the system that is delivering politically, and it's not a system that is delivering economically. Why I say so, it is because economics, as I said earlier in my introduction, that economics goes with politics. They are the same people that have been making positive noises about Ndabaye devolution of power They are the same people that made noises again before 1980 about a system of government that can deliver for its people. They were actually saying akubele federalism. For that reason, the thinking around people of Matabeleland is that we need a better system of government. I've been arguing isikhathi esiningi and been saying ukuthi there is no point to independence when you cannot control the resources that are at your disposal. So the agenda of independence or the war of liberation was about to liberate the people economically and have them control the resources at their disposal. Now, when we talk of the resources at their disposal, we are talking of the finances themselves. Being a finance person myself, I understand the frustrations that the people of Matabeleland have. You look at the roads themselves, you look at the schools, you look at many other infrastructure. Yes, I accept the infrastructure is bad across the country, but it can only be bad and accepted when it is so, when the people that are benefiting from the infrastructure have got enough authority to say, okay, from this point on, isikolo lesi sesingatshintsha into a science school or into an A-level school or something like that. They've got the authority to say this road can now be resurfaced and be this road and be that road. So when we are talking about the issues of lack of development in our region or in the region of Matabeleland, we are talking in the spirit of devolution and the spirit of actually controlling what is being done and what is supposed to be done in terms of development, because the reasons for independence, as I have later alluded to, is that you give people enough power to actually decide what's going to happen there. The last issue that I'm going to say is that of democratic factors. The democratic factors are having to do with the involvement of the army from 1983 up to 1987. Probably some of you have already alluded to that, because the issue of demography is very important when it comes to voting. I've already said that the percentages were higher in 1980 because people were excited, but they became lower in 1985 and lower in 1990, and up to now they're even lower. The issue of demography is important because people are displaced in terms of people running away from violence, people running away from economic factors, people running away from other issues that they thought probably were not giving them enough freedom to decide what to do politically. So the issues of age, you look at the younger people in Matabeleland, the younger people are no longer motivated to vote because they've been seeing that for the past 40 years, the aspect of voting doesn't benefit them. Because if voting is meant to benefit you and meant to empower you to make decisions, the people that are young enough to vote have been jumping the borders to South Africa and Botswana and many other places in search of employment. So the issue of demographic again comes into question. The other issue on the loop side of it is the issue of the people that voted in 1980, assuming that they were 30 years old by then or 20 years old by then. We add 44 years on top of that. We are talking of people that are 65 years right now. And some of them probably were more older by then. And by this time, when we talk of voting and influencing the trends, those people are older. Some of them have already passed on. Some of them moved to other greener pastures in search of employment and other things. So the issue of demography when it comes to voting is very key, in addition to the other three or so issues that I've already mentioned in my presentation, Mr. Nkala. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Nkala. Is it important for the people of Matabeleland to vote as a bloc or to vote for the political parties which are Matabeleland centric? Is it important?
Yes, I am of the same opinion that our region must vote as a bloc, because I believe that the interests that we have, be economic interests or political interests, are the same. Right now, I believe, like I'll borrow some of the words that Pajila has just used. I believe some of the interests being absorbed by other parties, not for the benefit of us as a people, but for the benefit of other parties for political expedience. So political expediency is over the livelihoods of the people of Matabeleland. The people of Matabeleland, for example, if I may just list some of the interests that they have. I read a paper written by one guy called Mchemwa, who was writing about disciplining the dissident city of Bulawayo. The guy was writing about water. He wrote extensively about water. People can look into the paper and give it a read, because it talks about the disputed construction of Chavez Dam. It also talks about the intentions of the then City Council of Bulawayo in 1985, who wanted to build the now being built Shangani Dam. So instead of building Shangani Dam, then the government decided to fund in portion. They didn't fund everything, because the residents of Bulawayo eventually fund every project, or funded every project by then, of building or constructing Chavez Dam. It eventually got constructed, but we know the capacities of Chavez Dam cannot sustain Bulawayo, and the pumping of it is expensive in terms of the gradients and things like that. So kusuka kube kunengi that affects that particular project. We have many other issues that continue to be talked about. The Zambezi water project, for example, is one of those. We also talk about the well-trodden path of resolution of Kukuraundi, that the very same government that we are talking of now, that we want to remove by vote, is failing to resolve. We talk about the issue of infrastructure, which affects abantu abetu. Right now, our region is posting the lowest pass rate in the country. Yes, there are other regions elsewhere that are posting lower pass rates, and they have got poor schools like us. But ours is the worst because of the issues that I've just mentioned, that the infrastructure is not up to standard for our people or our children to qualify for higher learning institutions like NAST, Gwanda State University, or Polytech, because they don't garner enough science passes, like maths and science, to qualify for those particular institutions. The construct of our region is such that iningi labantu abetu, or most of our populations in an African setup, even outside our region, is based in the rural areas. And the rural areas were affected the most by Kukuraundi. So you look at the disturbances that happened there that were not addressed, and those disturbances affect the socio-economic lives of Abantwana who are supposed to be NAST. So for that reason, it's one of those interests that must unite us to vote as a bloc. You look at the business sector side of it. ukhangele ukuthi iBulawayo was once called the industrial hub of Zimbabwe. Yes, it may have lost that prestige because our companies moved from the Bulawayo to Harare because of the problems that I have just alluded to. There was no water, there is no electricity, and things like that. However, since it has lost that prestige as an industrial hub, what happened to the labor that was there? The labor also lost its benefit. Abantu ababekhatshwe ngalawo ma-industries, they've lost their jobs, some were retrenched, some were moved to Harare and things like that. And there was a socio-economic disturbance. Imagine ubaba sechimu koBulawayo is being moved to Harare or Mtare, and kulabantwana abasesikolo that are supposed to be also moved, and the company is not willing to fund all that because you are not in a position high enough for you to be given imali school fees or things like that. A few of our brothers, of course, bathe besuka koBulawayo abanye baphiwa umsebenzi emkhulu bathola directorship and managerial positions, and they got cars and things like that. But it doesn't happen to many of our people ababulawayo. Talking of recently, Edgar's, I had young men whom I trained myself as scholar in various disciplines, economics. Some of them were complaining, lapha put us, I would rather resign than move to Harare because there is a lot of interest in me staying in Bulawayo rather than moving to Harare because of the life that I will experience there in terms of the rent and things like that. They don't even have family there. So the psychological impact of all those things ebantwini bakithi is so huge that it creates uhlupheka umuntu engazange ahlutshwe ngumuntu, just psychological aspect of it. So that is another reason why we should be voting as a bloc to also attract the economic interest and also push again lastly in Dabaye, because the issues of economics are important in that now Pachila besiyakhuluma eParliament bekhuluma ngendaba ze-devolution of power and things like that. They must also they also bring with them the issues of bread and butter, because the devolution of power empowers me and you to talk about the rates that we are collecting generally as a city of Bulawayo, generally as a city of Gwanda, generally as a city of Victoria Falls, generally as Plumtree, generally as Beitbridge. And what we decide to do about that should be within our powers, because imali efakwe ngabantu. Like I was giving an example of the construction of Mchabezi water project that we, the people of Matabeleland, contributed to. And here is a government. This government makes a decision that is not in our interest. It goes against our interest to construct Ishangani Dam and construct Mchabezi Dam, which doesn't have enough capacity to sustain Amanza Bulawayo. What happens next is that Ama industries are Bulawayo, because of the same resource that is not available. They withdraw and they go to Harare and other places that can support them in terms of the resources in Kulumanga. So kunengi nje okuma interest ethu is the social psychological aspect, is the economic aspect of it. Future generations, abantu abethu, future generations, abantu abethu, they're affected because of the pass rates that I've just said here. It also the interests that we are political, because now sikhuluma political, sikhuluma ngevoice eliyi-one. Like I was saying, for now our interests are being abused for expedience. ZANU-PF is using our votes for other purposes. ECCC is using our votes for other purposes. Maybe to delve on what they're using them for, maybe in another session. But I think and I believe that voting as a bloc will actually empower us and give us a better voice to actually talk to these issues, be it at Parliament, or wherever it is there. Ngiyabonga.
Okay. Siyabonga kakhulu Mnumzana Nkala. Angize kubaba uNkala ukuthi uma enesifiso soku engage any views ezirezwe lana ngabanye asebekhulumile angangena ba usho othanda ukusho.
Mbonge baba uNkala for the opportunity again ukuthi ngengage this question two nation state, just for me to also expand it, because ngibona ngathi i-question le abantu bayayesaba when the people of Matabeleland speak about them being Zimbabweans, but within Zimbabwe as a different nation, kulama vibes that come opposing that kind of a view that say no, you must not say you are a Matabele or a Ntokazian and then say you are a Zimbabwean at the same time. Konoko Urongo, it's labeled as being tribalist, it's labeled as being regionalist, it's labeled as all sorts of things. Kusuka kwenza ukuthi abantu bangani they are not keen to actually fight for their rights, because ngikhangela issue le as an issue of rights. It's an issue of actually saying if you are identifying as Umthokazi, there are certain things that are embodied in that word. The word itself means several things. It means uba Umthokazi, it means milaba forward. If we speak like Bajila was saying, we're sitting around the fire. If we discuss an issue, be it cultural issue, political or economics, siyazwanana. There is a certain level of engagement, or there is a certain level of a wave of engagement where people seemingly agree on certain principles of life. So, konokana mbona hani there is a wave that is fighting it. People mustn't identify as such. Even within our families, ungathi wena hayi nisake ngiyecelebrate ukuthi ngingumthwakazi. Some of our family members view you as a divisionist or someone who has extreme political views. So konokana kungathi kusuka kube i-problem. But surprisingly enough, the same people are ready to acknowledge the Welsh people. The same people are ready to acknowledge the Scottish and many other nations that are created around a similar principle. For example, when we talk of the United States of America, we are talking of different nations that came together to form one huge nation. When we talk of the United Kingdom, we are talking of different nations that came together to form one big nation. And there is a reason why when legal experts sat down to craft the United Nations Charter on self-determination and leave the question of self-determination open for people to decide how do they want to govern their affairs. So into naleyo ingathi ifuna ukuxasiswa sibili ukuthi hayi, when we will not run away from Zimbabwe as long as Zimbabwe identifies that we have a certain way of wanting to approach impilo yethu, even if we are within the borders of Zimbabwe. But the problem comes when the government is attacking you for your political persuasion. It attacks you for cultural orientation. And it attacks your aspirations, because our aspirations as abantu besiNdebeleni were attacked from the very first day after independence. Our aspirations were attacked. You know, our people that were in top leadership. We talk of the likes of Lookout Masugu, who was the deputy to the then Rex Nongo, who became General Solomon Juru. He was attacked for no reason and dragged to the courts and acquitted. But he was continually attacked again after the courts acquitted him. So we draw lessons from that, and people are surprised why we are drawing a lesson from an individual, but we are drawing a lesson from an individual who belonged to an organization that carried our aspirations of an independent Zimbabwe, which Ubaba Magonya said it died a long time ago. So the Zimbabwe that we thought we wanted is no longer the Zimbabwe that has been cooked for us. It's a different kind of a meal. We are seated at the table expecting a certain kind of dinner, and all of a sudden there's something else on the table, and anyone has got a right to say, apologies, I'm not partaking in the food. Well, people may say, you are on your own, you die of hunger. If you don't want to eat what you are eating, then that's your own problem. But then the problem you created. It's not my problem. You created the problem. We agreed that this is the kind of a thing that we need to cook together, but you decided otherwise, and you are creating a problem in order for you to cause problems for me. So it's not our problem, as one of our speakers said. So in our two-nation state, it's not a surprise. And when people go to the extent of saying, let's secede, when we're saying let's secede, it's some of these reasons that people are complaining about. Because when we talk of marginalization and other things, people are saying, okay, bring proof that you are marginalized. See, lioning us. Okay, where do you get the proof that you are marginalized if you don't have the valid statistics to back your accusation that you are being marginalized? But marginalization comes in many ways, in the sense that we're not really, as a government, you are not willing to resolve the issue of an atrocity that happened 43 years ago. That's one first step that they are not acknowledging, which there is a suppression of voice, because that was a suppression of a political voice by then. And it continued in many ways that is creating Indaba, a two-nation state, to become a debate. Like Prof. Moyo always says, the question of being Zimbabwean at some point has got to be answered. People will easily, laugh around you and wouldn't have a problem. But at the moment, then there is an issue. There is an issue that causes a vibe to actually cause you to think twice about identifying yourself as such. Yabo.
Okay. Siyabonga kakhulu. Yikho-ke, what we will do now is to conclude ingxoxo yethu ebesinayo, engicabanga ukuthi bekuyingxoxo enhle kakhulu. Ngizocela ukuthi ngamunye wenu anikeze ama-closing remarks akhe.
Hayi, ngibonge abafowethu, ngiyakubingelela mfowethu Bajila. Hayi, sikaze sibonane ngobuso. Thank you very much for your presentations. Ngibonge lani babhuti abadala uMagonya laphana lo Ndlovu, lo Methusela. Ngiyakubingelela Moyo. Thanks so much for your view, especially on indaba ye-local government, because ngibona ngathi indaba ehluphayo futhi yona le-local government, because i-local government abantu ungabona abantu bebuza nge-local government besithi why kanti lifuna ukuvota as a block, lingavoti as part of a collective vote. Bakhulumele kufuna ukususeni the current government, and their target is the president, obviously, ukuthi bafuna ukususa by then befuna ukususa upresident Robert Mugabe. Now bafuna ukususa president Emerson Mnangagwa. So that is the essence of the question, ukuthi block voting national voting, because at the end of the day kungasela enough numbers to unseat the current government. But lokho kwenziwa isystem esisebenzisayo kathesi ukuthi the way our seats are distributed across the country, lakho khona kubangela ukuthi sibe lama problems, because it is skewed to a level yokuthi ngapha Matabeleland Midlands silama seats 38 Matabeleland, and then ngale the rest of the country they've got the 142 142 seats out of the voting to 10, if my math serves me right. So khona lakho kwenza ukuthi kube le imbalance in terms of power. Those are some of the things that probably our constitution needs to correct, ukuthi at the end of the day thina njengabantu bematabeleland we don't have enough say in terms of who governs us at a given point. Our votes become complementary to the system. I say a decisive vote. Probably that is why some people are no longer voting, because our votes become a top of the chair, and they are not deciding anything. That's why probably we may need to look at the constitution and say, okay, can you consider a proportional representation kind of a thing, so that we have a say. Maybe it may satisfy some of the questions as we are would do as we block voting. Probably it won't help, because you won't remove ZANU-PF at the end of the day. It will remain there. Even if you vote as a block with your hands, with your feet, you won't remove the current setup. But ngibonge ukuthi ama contributions abekhona la ngifundile okuningi kakhulu. To close the session from my part, of course, ukuthi ngithi mina ama interests ethu political and economically must unite us. We must be united around what drives our political interests, because if we are driven by our political interests, the economic interests definitely they will follow. Ngiyabonga.
Asibonge kakhulu Baba Nkala, asibonge kakhulu.